Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Johnson, your host of the Local Leaders Podcast, and we are super excited to have with us today the Village Bistro, and we've got Kara Vogt on. And welcome, Kara, and thank you for joining our show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, like I said, we're super excited. I love the opportunity to talk to people and really get to hear the stories of their business and challenges and things such as that. And our audience, loves to hear how you solve some of those challenges. But let's start off by just inviting you to share a little bit about your restaurant, and just go ahead and tell us about the Village Bistro.
So the Village Bistro was a concept I'd had in my head for probably 19 years before I actually opened it. And I didn't do from the ground up. I'd almost given up on it after having kids. I stayed home for 11 years, got out of the restaurant industry altogether. But my husband actually found this location almost 6 years ago, and he came and had lunch here at the location. It was called the Village Deli and Cafe, and it was just open a few hours a day for light breakfast and lunch, and that was it. But it was just really perfect in size and location, and it was everything that I had been looking for. So it was kind of a little bit of a back and forth between us. I had started a career in mortgage lending and love it, and I'm still doing it today, but didn't want to give that up just because it is a good source of income, and I know the restaurant industry can be rough at times, and so anyway, having the stability was important to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of pushed back a little bit. I did come and visit the minute I walked in. I fell in love with the spot, and once we finally pulled the trigger and decided it was going to happen, it was about 30-day turnaround from ownership to ownership.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to where, like the menu, I slowly over time have rewritten it. It doesn't look much at all like it did. I kept some of the old favorites because there was a clientele base here that I did not want to lose.
Right.
But rebranded and kind of went upscale compared to where it was.
Well, there's, you've got to put your touch on it, especially after making the move and taking the risk and moving forward with this thing. And after what did you say, 19 years kind of in your head?
Yes. Yeah. I had a dream for about 19 years. And so, I guess to that, I'll say to anybody who listens, don't give up on your dream. Like, you're learning things along the way that you'll carry with you, and things that I learned even staying at home for those 11 years. I got a chance to refine some recipes and just kind of develop processes. I would feed our church, I would feed our youth group quite regularly, and so it was fun for me, without even realizing it, preparing myself for food service in my own place, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes absolute sense, and actually, it's an interesting way to get in, kind of get into the business, and maybe I don't know if you realized it at the time or not, but you were in training, and as you said, developing processes and systems and recipe refinement and things like that. So I find that very interesting because people start a lot of different ways, and you kind of went that group route. There's been a number of people on the show that have started up in a food truck to minimize kind of the investment risk and lower the startup cost, and then gone on to brick and mortar. So a lot of people start as catering, in a catering business, which is essentially what you were doing, maybe but not necessarily with a formal business at that time, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Now, is your husband involved in the restaurant now, or is he doing his thing?
He came from the fitness industry, and so anyway, he was fully engaged in that. And then when COVID-19 hit and lockdowns and shutdowns and the ongoing for our state, he decided it was time to make a change, and now he's in real estate and doing really well.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, so both of you have full-time careers.
Yes.
And I'm interested in, and I think our audience will be too, you minimize risk by, basically opening the restaurant as a second career path. You've got your mortgage business, and
yes.
I want to say loan origination. I guess it's kind of the same kind of thing. Anyway, What a great time to be in that business this past year.
Yes.
Yeah, at least over here in where I am, which is in North Carolina, and I guess all across the country. Has business been super good for you?
Yes, it has. I did kind of set it. I still originated last year and closed. I did not actively work that business because it took everything I had to keep the doors open for the restaurant, if that makes sense.
It does. I was going to ask how you were able to balance it, because it would be tough to have two full-time jobs.
I did my average amount of business, where a lot of originators would have seen an escalation in business, or exponential growth. I just did my average numbers that I would typically do, that I knew I could handle while still be engaged in the restaurant every day.
And are you a 5-day-a-week restaurant, or what do your days and hours kind of look like?
We're 6 days a week. Monday through Friday, we're 9 to 7, and Saturday we're 9 to 4. We're closed on Sundays. And it's funny, people laugh. They're like, "What? You should be open earlier. You should be open later." Or, everybody's got their idea on how I should operate the business. But for me, it's quality of life for not just myself, but my employees. And they work hard when we're here. When we open those doors, we are busy from the time we open till the time we close. And so quality of life is important. They get 2 nights off a week, Saturday and Sunday. And then I really work to make sure that they have at least 2 full days off every week as well. So anyway, yeah, that's just why our hours are the way they are.
Well, you know what? You always have to be open to input, especially from your customers and people like that. And there's nothing wrong with listening and hearing, but it definitely doesn't mean you have to react, right? You're in it for you and your family, and sometimes you just have to push back and do what you feel is right. And quality of life is definitely an area that is lacking in the restaurant industry. And I'm sure your employees are very appreciative, that they're able to get some time off.
Yeah. I don't know if we would be that much busier if we opened earlier or stayed open later. The Tri-Cities is a funny little town, to me, place. It operates much like a coastal town. Everything shuts down by about 7. So
yeah.
For me, I find those hours, and for our business itself, those hours are perfect.
Well, that's what matters. And you're doing your thing. Tell me kind of what were some of the challenges, I guess, that you ran into when you first opened up, and I know, of course, COVID and staffing and things like that are challenges today, but was there anything that stands out that was really a struggle for you?
When I first purchased the business?
Yes, ma'am. When you first got it and opened up.
It's kind of funny. Here's what I would say to anybody listening. do the research behind the scenes, not just on the business itself, but city mandates, city codes, county requirements. I did it a little bit. However, what was interesting, when I opened my doors, I got a letter from the city that I was not compliant with codes. And I was like, this business was in operation, for several years prior. Literally, it was turnkey. Like, they closed one day, I revamped the menu and met with my team. And then on Monday morning, we opened up as the Village Bistro, right? So I was like, how can I not be in compliance with a business that was operational 2 days ago? And there was a requirement by March 31st, which I took over February 1 of 2016, to have a grease trap or grease interceptor put in place. Even though we don't have deep fryers, I do a lot of things very fresh here. We don't use a whole lot of grease. But anyway, the restaurants here in the Tri-Cities didn't have those in place and weren't required to prior. So the previous ownership had known this and had left me a note on the desk in an envelope. But in the hustle of getting this thing turned around quickly and opened up, I didn't see it right away. My fault. So that was about it was about a $5,500 cost right away.
Gosh, yeah. What a slap in the face that was, huh?
Kind of, yes. And in our area at that time and at this time, there huge construction boom going on, housing boom, commercial construction. There was, if you needed plumbing repairs or work done, you're going to have to wait or pay extra for emergencies. But thankfully, this town loves their locals. And so I was able to get a local plumbing company out here on a Sunday so that I could be in compliance in time. And they didn't charge me overtime because they felt bad.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And they're still customers to this day. But yeah, it was, they dug the hole. We had to tear up flooring, dig into the ground, place this grease interceptor because the requirement was for this location, it had to be connected to the main line, to the main drain lines, right? So anyway, it was quite an adventure right away. And had I spent a little more time and not done such a quick turnaround on this, but I don't really know. There were some competing offers on the place too. So just be ready for excitement when you open.
Yeah, that's great advice because like you said, you never know, and nothing is inexpensive in the restaurant business.
No.
especially on the maintenance side, or a freezer quits, or the hood decides to go kaput. It's all big money, and wow, that's a heck of a way to start. But it
was a heck of a way.
Yeah, it was. So thank goodness for the plumbers that were willing to work.
They were wonderful.
Yeah, it's nice to be in an area that a community that cares and supports their fellow business people, and that always helps. And I'm sure you made it worth their while in terms of feeding them all these years since then, right?
They have been fantastic. Yes.
That's awesome. Any other well, let me backtrack a second, and this may be too personal, but I'm just curious about the financing part, and I didn't really prep you on asking you anything about that, but were you guys able to do like a cash deal, or did you have to go to the banks or look for lending help? And I'm asking that because our audience runs into that a lot, our listeners.
Oh, for sure.
Just curious as to how it kind of went down.
Thankfully, it was a cash deal, which is why we were able to do such a quick turnaround. So from the time that we put our offer in, it was cash, and we put a 30-day close. And we did that to be competitive, as there were other offers on the table. So anyway, for our position, we were able to do a cash deal. So
that's terrific. Yeah, that does make it, just like with a home, that makes it a lot easier on the closing side, and and able to get through it. Any plans that you got, or do you guys have any plans for maybe adding a Village Bistro in another location? Have you gotten that far, or you want to hit me for asking that?
Oh boy, yeah, no, I won't hit you. I've been asked to open one in a couple different spots, but no, at this time, right now, we're just trying to kind of get our bearings after the shutdowns and the limited
Yeah.
capacities, and trying to find that stable ground again. So yeah, no, I can't even imagine trying to have 2 locations right
Oh, well, I can understand that. And there's a lot of people out there in the exact same situation. And I like the way you put it. You're trying to really get back to stable,
now. Yes,
which, you know, is a critical component for any kind of growing company. You've really got to have a stable, consistent business that, you know, all your processes and things like that are worked out, and you're able to fully staff the one and have that thing operating perfectly before you kind of stretch yourself and go to that next location. And with the times that we're in with COVID and everything else, and you just mentioned earlier before we started about the mask mandate coming back in Washington State. So we still don't know, you know, what's going to happen. So I guess, you know, what do? You just go day to day, right?
yeah. Actually, a news station was just out interviewing me on Monday as to what I thought would happen, or what to expect, and I don't know. We take it one day at a time now. I don't know what to expect. The rules, especially and guidelines for restaurants, changed. It felt like every other week last year. It was just nuts. So pivoting, just being in a mindset where you have a plan and then you have a backup plan, and then sometimes they kind of meld together. And just being okay with knowing that you need to be ready to bend and flex again, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is so challenging. But I think we've all come through here a lot stronger. It really made me drill down on processes. It really forced me to launch myself into the 21st century on the back end. So online ordering was not an option on my website. It is now. We upgraded my point of sale systems. My servers now all have tablets. They go to the table and take your order. There's no writing things down anymore. It just, anything that we could do to cut down time, to cut down the amount of interactions on the tables, because that was important. We looked at every single process and found ways to improve them, I suppose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you about that anyway, kind of how the pandemic had impacted you guys, because not everybody is set up uniquely or perfectly for takeout, for curbside,
Right.
for delivery, and all the stuff that goes with it. And it's, the the basics of the business has really changed at that point in time.
Yes.
And you had to pivot, and it sounds like you took the right steps. And I did notice on the website there's online ordering, and a lot of people are afraid of that, but it's really no big deal now, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has just earlier this week we were notified that it is not linking to the point of sale for whatever reason. I don't know. There's some sort of issue. So there's IT issues along the way, but
Yeah.
there's a help ticket and it's going to get fixed. But for the most part, yeah, it'll come right to the point of sale and it alerts us. There's an order, and we can accept it, or we can reach out to the customer at that moment and say, hey, I'm sorry, we just ran out of our flatbreads, or whatever it is that they've ordered.
Yeah.
Would you like to substitute? But it made it super simple for people to submit their orders. We can confirm them, and then either if it's a delivery option, they can pay right there on the website, or if they want to pick it up, they can indicate that. Any kind of notes. It was just super quick and easy because our phones were busy a lot of the times. And so to have that option and get your order in,
Mhm.
it was quite incredible. It shouldn't be anything scary once you get it figured out, and there's going to be kinks along the way, and then you refine those.
Yes.
But the online ordering option was huge for us. Just it sounds funny, but it really was.
Yeah,
Um,
and your food is pretty conducive for takeout. I'm thinking, am I accurate in that statement?
some of it was not when this all started, so we refined menus.
Yes.
We looked at how we packaged everything. I got a good friend of mine. He does a lot of my graphic design, photography, and video work. Him and my IT guy and my food service, my food purveyor, we all sat on a call together when this started. And I just wanted to pick their brains from different perspectives. What's going to be important to succeed in this kind of an environment, in a delivery and takeout environment? Because you've probably picked up food. I've picked up food from places and gotten it home, and it really just is kind of blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, well, shoot, this is delicious in the store, but not by the time you get it all home.
Yeah.
So looking at every aspect of the menu and packaging, travelability, the food has to travel well, right?
Right.
So anyway, yeah, it just all parts. We had one thing, and I'll share with anybody that's listening. It's important because I've gotten a ton of feedback, positive feedback on it from businesses. They would order 20, 30, 60 lunches, right? And this isn't something we were used to doing before, and a lot of restaurants were used to doing. But we started training them all. Put your name next to your order. They would email it in, or even if they were calling in, we would have the name typed in next to each item, so that when it comes from the kitchen, your expo, who's putting it all together, can write the individual name of the person on each box, so that once that entity, business, or whatever receives the order, when you have even 10, 15, 20
Yeah.
box lunches
Yeah.
or dinners, you don't want people rifling through every option trying to figure out which one's mine and which one's yours. They can just literally pick up their box and it is what they ordered, and it's their name.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how many local businesses around us were so thankful that we adapted to that, rather than writing what the item was or just boxing it up and sending it and good luck, figure it out.
Yeah.
They were just thankful that we took the time, that extra step. It made distribution so much easier. It made those the concerns for health safety with COVID and food, and I don't know, everybody was just thankful that we took that route with the takeout. So that's if I could advise anybody to do anything going forward, get the names of your customers and put them on the boxes or the bags. They would
Mhm.
be so thankful. And it's kind of personalized at that point too.
Absolutely, and I can't emphasize enough that the importance of that, because I've been on that end where you got 18 people having a meeting, and the big box comes in with all the other boxes inside it, and you, just like you said, you got to start opening, and I had the turkey. Oh, well, my turkey's got something extra on it, and yeah,
Yes,
it's a nightmare.
yes.
And POS systems will support that as well for those that
Yes.
don't know, because POS system, you can add the name, in the notes, or however your system's set up, and you can also add label printers, and be able to print those name labels basically to just attach right to it. You don't necessarily have to go that route, but if you've got a large volume, it may be worth the extra few $100s for that label printer.
Well, that's just the thing too. I mean, some of this stuff, yes, there's initial cost in adding in the online ordering or whatnot, but in the end, if the customer experience is better, they're likely to repeat order from you. And so, yes, you will have that initial cost, but you will recoup that in the repeat business and in the referrals.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's been amazing to me how some of my customers have really gone up on those large lunch orders, especially as people return back to work and you couldn't go out to eat. So the larger orders started coming in, and a lot of people didn't anticipate that and think through it. And you're right, any investment in technology to simplify or make you more efficient will lead to a better customer experience and hopefully growth. And that's what we're
Right.
all about. So
Yes.
good advice, Kara. Thank you for that. So you guys had to definitely make some changes and adapt your business and be flexible. And it looks like that you did all the things that successful restaurateurs are doing to try and get through this. Let me ask you about your staffing side. I mean, you're not a multi-chain franchise or anything like that.
No.
But have you been able to hold on to your people, or are you having any issues with not having enough staff?
Well, last year when this all began, I looked at my team and I said, I need to know right now, are you in this with me or are you not? Because if you're in, you all have your jobs. If not, well, we'll look at paring it down and closing temporarily, or I don't know. We didn't know what was coming.
Yeah.
And every single one of them said, I don't want to lose my job. I love working here. I'm in. And so I did have, actually the first day I had one walkout, and so that was a little rough. He was my full-time lead line cook, and so that was a little challenging, but we made it through. No, I did not lay anybody off. I did take out that first PPP loan that was an option, and that carried us through the first 8 weeks, of which I had to, at that time, they hadn't made any changes to it. You had to use it within the 8 weeks of after receiving it, right? So I kept everybody full bore, and we were open for takeout and delivery. We did experience quite a reduction in revenue for the first couple months, just because I think everybody was just very unsure what was going to happen. So that PPP was huge for those first 2 months. And then we were still shut down here in Washington. We weren't reopening yet. And so the EIDL was an option, and I applied for it and received it. And I just was like, I don't know how long this is going to go on for, but I've committed now to not laying these people off. And now 2 months in, we were seeing people we know all around us not even receiving their unemployment. And so how was that supposed to work? How are they supposed to pay their rent? And there was the moratorium on rent, but some of them have mortgages. And so I did not feel right laying anybody off again. So that EIDL came into play, the EIDL, and I just kept them on payroll. And then slowly we started reopening, slowly revenues started coming back up. And then we got shut down again, which in November, I think it was early November, is when the announcement came that we were closing down the state again. Whew, okay, so now what? And you had heard of tents going up in other parking lots, right, around this country.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, his business is not far behind ours. He walks over and he goes, well, do you want to set up a tent in the parking lot? And I thought, yeah, let's do it. Let's figure it out. Let's do this. I don't want to lose the ability to do business. Let's do this. And a second shutdown would have been brutal for us. And so we found a tent. I purchased it. Thankfully, I found it on Marketplace on Facebook, which is funny enough. But somebody who had event rentals was liquidating. And so I got an 800 square foot tent for $1,000. Which is actually pretty affordable for those things.
Yeah.
Then we got permission from the other businesses around us to take up parking places. I needed 10 parking spaces to make this monstrosity work. And they were like, yeah, well, we can't be open. We don't have customers. Go for it. So we set the tent up. and put we've got little, the bistro lights that you see like hanging on fences and different things. And we hung those up inside, and I rented a diesel powered airplane deicer, and it had ductwork to it. So we ducted that into the tent and kept it heated.
Goodness gracious.
Set up. And then I bought those, they're the Lifetime brand, those folding tables, and folding chairs, but I made sure I got the cushion chairs because it's now winter time outside. It's very cold here. So at least you weren't sitting on a frozen metal chair out there. And so I did have to invest, but do you know that thing in, what did we figure? I think over the 2.5 months it was up, it brought in 45,000 in revenue by itself. So the initial investment for me was about 4,000 all in, but it brought in 45,000 in revenue. It kept my servers employed, you know, and it kept us all in shape. We were putting in 10 to 15,000 steps a day, getting out to the tent and back into the restaurant.
Yeah, it's a long walk to the kitchen, wasn't it?
It kept my cooks working. It kept us all going because the takeout was still going on also. So it was quite and the people, this community, I keep saying that, but it is quite incredible how many people came out. That tent was full most days. It was full of people. So it was, I mean, we did the whole spacing between the tables, you know, and I don't think we had more than 5 or 6 to a table was what we could do. And it was just wild.
I mean, it was, you know, basically you built the pop-up restaurant, you know,
Yes.
in today's terms. Usually that's a retail kind of thing with the pop-up stores, but and plenty of, you know, many other people did the same thing, but that's a lot of work. It's, you know, it was another investment you had to make when you weren't sure, you know, that
Right.
it would generate revenue or not. But there again, you're trying to keep the business going. You're trying to keep your employees
Employed.
employed and making sure that they can pay their bills, and plus you're feeding the community who's hungry.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
gosh, if nothing else, this pandemic for the general consumer has, you know, I believe drastically increased our desire to not cook. It's like we want to go out all the time and eat, and at least that's what it feels like to me, that my wife and I, we're out much more than we used to be. And you know, ordering food and taking it home and going into the restaurants now that we're able to do that. And you know, I think we were pretty fortunate in North Carolina to not have those excessive shutdowns or long periods of shutdowns that some of you guys had to deal with. But yeah, it seems to have changed, you know, a lot of things, because the restaurants are just super busy now. And you know,
Yes.
that leads us back to the fact that in our area and most of the parts of the country, many of our restaurants, you know, don't have the staff to be able to support the demand. And so it can be frustrating on the consumers, and for anybody that's listening that doesn't own a restaurant and you know, or visiting restaurants, please be patient. And
Yeah. Well, because
yeah, go ahead.
now anytime you have an employee with any kind of symptoms, they have to go out and get tested before they can come back, you know. And so depending on the lag time on the test result, or if they can even get to a place to be tested, there's plenty of places, but there's always a challenge, right? And so we find ourselves in a position where some days I might be down 2 full-timers because they got to go get tested, you know, or they get tested and it's negative. Thankfully, we've mostly been negative through this. I've had a couple employees test positive over the last 18 months, but overall, they've all been healthy. But there's a flu running around now, and so then they're out, you know. And so it's just been an interesting adventure.
It has definitely been that, and you know, it's not meant for everyone to own a business or own a restaurant specifically, but any type of business, because there's inherent risk, and you can't control everything. So
no, you cannot.
we do the best that we can. Hey, let me ask you on kind of a different subject, and I want to be mindful of your time. So you tell me if we need to get off quickly. But
You're good.
I was just curious, as coming from the background that you have, had, and being in the mortgage industry and kind of working for yourself by yourself in that industry. Have you grown as like a leader now? Have you noticed that, and was that a challenge trying to, suddenly having employees and other people who depended on you? Can you share a little bit about that piece of the journey?
Yes. So years ago, before children, BC, for me, um,
I like that.
I
BC.
I was in the restaurant industry. I worked for Red Robin's
Uh-huh.
in Olympia and down in Salem, over here on the West Coast. And then um, after being in the corporate world for a while, I had stepped up into management positions for them. I went, it was really rough on our marriage. We were newly married at that time. And so I decided to step out of the industry um, on that level. And went more towards the small family owned style restaurants, and that was better for us. It was less hours, and it was just a different environment altogether. But anyway, I'm thankful for all of the experiences that I had, because I picked up a lot of skills and learned a lot of things in managing people at that time. But definitely, then I stayed home for 11 years. That was different for sure. Managing little people is different than managing adults, but
Yes, it
sometimes
is.
it's not.
Sometimes it's not. I was gonna say.
Sometimes it's not. No, I would say over the years having the restaurant, I have I don't want to say become less patient, but I will address things that need to be addressed a lot quicker now than I would have before. Things to kind of go on, and I would say, well, let's see, so it'll work itself out or whatever. Some things don't work themselves out. And so I've learned it's just better to rip the Band-Aid if there's an issue, whether it be a personnel issue from employee to employee, or there's a problem with the way my trucks are coming in for deliveries of our food. It doesn't matter what it is. I've just learned it's better to address it immediately rather than let it sit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
that's a that's a lesson that's tough on everyone, because we all are, we want to we want to be kind and considerate of others, but like you said, things left festering tend to just get worse.
they get
So
worse. Yeah. And so, and I think it is kind and it is respectful to deal with things immediately rather than let them build up and let frustrations grow, or let problems continue. So anyway, yeah, I think I've grown a lot in that way,
yeah.
if that makes sense, because
Yeah.
I try to always be very understanding and very observant before I take care of an issue, but sometimes things just need to be stopped right away. So anyway, I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, I think that's a great answer, and something to consider for any of our listeners who are just getting started on their journey. As you got to be aware that of your leadership position, because you are the leader of the business, and sometimes you have to adapt and become flexible there as well, because not all people want to be led the same way.
Right.
And you got to be cognizant of that and aware of what you're dealing with, and try to adapt yourself as in the best possible way to be the most efficient and to get the most out of the people. And I
That's the
think that's
other
the hard
part of it,
part.
getting the most out of your people. Stepping back, I learned this from someone I assisted under years ago. Put your aces in their places. If you have somebody who's very strong at a supporting role, maybe they're but they're detail oriented, they'll fit perfect as an expo. You know what I mean?
I
Or
do.
different things. When people are showing their strength, let them run with their strengths, you know, and they're happier for it too. So I've picked that up from Dave. He managed me years ago, and he would always say aces in their places, and I thought it was funny, but it's so true.
You know what's really funny? You're gonna get a kick out of this. Is I had never heard that term before until about 3 hours ago, and
Nuh-uh.
I had an interview like this with a gentleman that happened to be out of North Carolina as well, and he used that term today, and I'm like, man, I've never heard that, but I really like it, and now I've heard it twice in the same day. That's crazy.
That is funny.
Yeah, 54 years, and all of a sudden I hear something new twice in the same day. So it must be a pretty popular phrase, and I'm going to be using it going forward. Well, it's awesome, and thank you so much for everything that you shared with us. I'm again trying to watch the clock and make sure I don't take too much of your time. I know we got a late start. We had a little technology challenge for our listeners early on. Hopefully they didn't notice, and but I do want to kind of start to wrap us up so we can can let you get back to your day. Any final words of wisdom or pearls of wisdom, as we say around the South, that you might want to leave with us?
I would just say enjoy each day for what it is. There's going to be challenges, there's going to be frustrations, there's going to be huge wins, and take everything that you can and learn from it and have fun. I mean, if you're not doing this to have fun, because really it's about people, it's about hospitality, it's about bringing people together around good food, then what are we doing it for, right?
You're absolutely right. That's great advice, and we all need to kick back and take that to heart more often than we do. So yes, ma'am. Thank you for sharing that. And for any of you guys who haven't had the opportunity to visit the Village Bistro, and I may get this wrong. Is it Kennewick?
That's correct.
I said it right. Kennewick. And now I can't do it again. Kennewick, Washington. I should have stopped with the first one. But if you're in the area, please stop by and see Kara and her team at the Village Bistro. Her website address is the Village Bistro Tri-Cities.com, and we're going to flash it across the screen here for those of you who want to check her out. And there's a big old online ordering tab there for you to place your orders immediately. Make reservations, group parties, gift cards, etc. So be sure to visit online or in person as soon as you can. And thank you so much, Kara, for sharing your experience and your knowledge and expertise with us today. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, ma'am. It was indeed a pleasure for me, and for all our listeners. We appreciate you joining us for another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and I look forward to seeing you at the next podcast episode.